Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to thank Mr. Nikolai Baranov, the European Parliament member, to invite us to the European Parliament, to the heart of democracy. That has been an example for people like me and my friends who are here and those who are not here and they are in Iran and around the world to dedicate our 4 decades of our life to achieve democracy for our country. Democracy and freedom was and has been the only reason justified joining people like us or groups that claim to be seeking democracy. Since achievement of this precious goal can only be valued if achieved collectively. In this context, we left our best lives we had in Europe and joined the Mujahidin-e Khalgh, a group that claimed to be seeking democracy, led by Masoud Rajavi in 1979. But unfortunately, later we found ourselves betrayed and trapped in a dangerous terrorist cult group. Therefore, we welcome this opportunity at the heart of democracy to correct our path to democracy and freedom and declare our split from a dangerous terrorist cult that support ISIS and Taliban in our region. Everybody in Europe is witnessing a new phenomenon around the world, and surprisingly, in the West too. That is expansion of terrorism from isolated regions to around the world. As far as we have witnessed, the terrorist organizations have lived for long, but recently, in the last decade, they have changed face, and they are trying to deceive the Western democracy in order to infiltrate into these societies, and then to show their real, when they have their grip in this society, they show their face. This has been the policy of the organization that we joined 40 years ago. This was our official strategic policy to hide our anti-democratic natures, our anti-Western culture nature, to achieve power, and then having achieved power, to show the real face and fight with Western democracy. And this is exactly what is nowadays happening. And as you have seen, their actions, their terrorism, and also on the other side, their political activities, that we have even witnessed that their leaders, they can still come to European Parliament and make speeches in the hope of deceiving the Western democracy in order to achieve power, for instance, in my country, and having got the power and the money, and then show their real face. What has exactly happened with ISIS, that having gained financial support, military support from, for the false cause of fighting against dictatorship, now having got all this support, now they have showed their real face. And using every means in order to fight and to destroy all the human values, democracy, freedom all around the world, and it's not even confined to a piece of land. They are everywhere, and they are threatening even the basic security of every individual. Even the innocent people, they don't care about nothing whatsoever unless reaching the power and actually, as my dear friend Mr. Nikolai Baranov has said, the money which brings the power in the name of different religions, especially at this time, which is called Islam. We have been Muslims for years, but we do not recognize such a barbarism, such a violence, and inhuman acts under any religion. These groups, including the organization, we have now split it and declared that we have every means to disclose their real nature, have never thought of such violence. We used to use this Islam in order to deceive ordinary people, to bring them into what we actually wanted them to do. We use Islam to convince, to justify all our violent, barbaric, and terrorist activities, to give them the justification to kill, to behead in the name of Allah, because otherwise no human being can act such acts of violence into such an extent, because to do so you must first leave your humanitarian values to act into such an extent of violence. So, for the leaders who are seeking power and money, they use every means. And they wouldn't, and they have not hesitated to use the name of God, the name of the Prophet, Quran, the holy books, and whatever they could in order to convince or to deceive the people, or especially young people, everywhere, in my country, in Europe, everywhere nowadays, to bring these people into the acts of violence. Therefore, we must nowadays, previously, the threat was from the government for the human rights violations, but nowadays, unfortunately, this has dramatically changed. The governments were confined to territories, but the terrorism nowadays is not confined to anything. They are everywhere. Therefore, we must quickly change our fight to keep our democracy, our freedom, the human values in the world, in the West, and everywhere. We must be very, very quick acting. We should recognize the terrorism that has changed face. In our case, Mujahidin, recently, for an example, recently Masoud Rajavi, the leader of the Mujahidin-e, in an open statement to his members, have declared killing of all dissident members in Europe, in the United States. It is shocking, it is astonishing that how in Europe a cult leader can call for the killing of dissident members. That means the members must chase the dissident members and kill them anywhere they can. This is what the real face of terrorism is. Or even inside the organization, they are using every means. They have cut off the members from every means of communication with outside world. This is how they can manipulate people in order to commit acts of violence. They have cut all the means of communication. No telephone sets, no mobiles, no internet, no TV, nothing, not even news. So only those who are being manipulated, they can only hear what the cult leaders or the terrorist leaders are telling them, false information, in order to motivate them to do what they can. And they set up courts inside their organizations in order to punish those who would seek anything but the orders of the leaders of these terrorist organizations. So that's why we are here to announce that to put an end to this sort of terrorism that is now expanding around the world, and they have unfortunately bases in Paris. A few years ago, when their leader was arrested by the order of the leaders, they committed acts of self-killings by putting fire on themselves on the streets of Paris. That is only why they didn't act on the French citizens, just because their leader was in Paris, in West, at the reach of the law. If they had committed this act against the French citizens, their leader would have been arrested and be tried for these terrorism. They would, when the man who kills himself on the street would do that against everybody else, when they have the means, when the leader is not at the reach of law. And the Western democracy must pinpoint these terrorist cells and fight and stop them from spreading. Those who misuse the freedom and democracy in the West in order to act against it. So we ask the European democracy, the European Parliament officials, to recognize, to open the eyes to these violent and terrorist threats that is threatening the human values, democracy and freedom all around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you.